We have done a lot of coverage on this program on the opioid crisis, particularly in Vancouver. And today we have a BC paramedic, Clive Derbyshire, joining us. A paramedic who worked today, but also a paramedic who is an addict, has a substance abuse problem, which is obviously a pretty interesting story. Tell us about your addiction.
I started drinking alcohol when I was about 13 years old, and drinking steadily progressed to becoming an alcoholic. By the time I was in university, I was using cocaine quite regularly. Dropped out of university, pursued alcoholism and drugging over school, went to the UK, lived there for a couple of years, and came back and tried to get grounded for a life, but I was lost and drank a lot, used more cocaine, and then about 2 years ago I made a switch to crystal methamphetamine, and it very quickly overtook my life.
And describe that a bit for us, because obviously most people watching would have no idea, first of all, about crystal meth, but especially how the addiction must have consumed you.
Yeah, it did. Generally, I started off using it, here and there at parties, doing whatever, and very quickly I became heavily addicted to it, and had huge absenteeism at work. Wasn't able to get through a day without getting high.
And at this point, you were a paramedic.
Yeah.
So a high-pressure, high-functioning job. So on the days that you weren't absent, you were able to do your job properly?
The best I could, yeah.
And still, though, consumed by the addiction. And so were you thinking about it all the time?
Yeah, there were days where I would book off work and go home.
To get high?
To get high.
And I know it's a very personal thing, so I don't want to intrude too much, but what impact did it have outside of your professional life, on your personal life?
I became very isolated. I started shutting out my family. My family started grasping, trying to get me back into their lives. My daughter became very afraid of me. My dad and my brother and sister just wanted me in their lives, and I would just push them away. I'd betray friends, I would lie, I would manipulate. Yeah.
How did you manage to get to the point where now you're back at work?
Yeah, so about 14 or 15 months ago, I was in a spot where I was. I had no self-confidence. I was heavily depressed. I felt that if I kept going, I was going to kill myself by suicide. I was broken, and I ran out of lies to tell, ran out of people to manipulate. People started cutting me out of their lives, friends of mine. And the only thing I knew what to do was to reach out for help, and I asked my employer, BC Ambulance Service, for help.
I've heard a handful of stories over the years from people who have battled addiction, and they don't always manage to get it under control. You have. A lot of it has to do with the willingness to want to change, the opportunity for programs. But I want to jump ahead to something, because at this time so many addicts are in the news. We see the stories of opioid overdoses, and some people look at that and say, listen, they're making bad choices, and why are we spending all of these resources to keep them alive?
Because they're human beings. That's why we do it. This is a non-discriminatory disease. It doesn't care what you do or how much you earn, what you do for a living, who your parents are. It takes over your brain and it wants to kill you. That's its mission. And you need a lot of support to get through that. You need a lot of help. It's not something that you can just switch off.
I heard you talking to somebody earlier about compassion fatigue, even if you understand that. And we had an addict in here not long ago marveling at how non-judgmental people were. The paramedics, the firefighters, the people at the hospital, but at some point are you and your colleagues getting tired? Not negative, but just tired of what you're seeing?
I would say that there's an accumulative stress happening, yeah. people I've worked with for years, I watch their responses to, and it can just be simple as when we get the call on the computer and we head off on the call, their physiological response and how they drive even versus how they used to drive, it's noticeable.
Let me finish with this. What should we be doing now?
We should be reaching out and offering as much help as we can get. The hardest thing I ever had to do was ask for help. Not understanding where I was at in my life, not understanding the problem that I had, I had to ask, and I had to get over the stigma of addiction and the shame and the guilt and the fear, and be willing to accept. But I had to trust somebody I had to have someone that I could trust to ask, to know that they were gonna do whatever they could to help me if I was willing to do whatever I can back.
You're back at work. It takes a lot of courage to tell your story. We appreciate it, and you still describe yourself as a substance abuse user, but treated or fighting it, or what's your status now?
I'm a recovering addict, and I only have today. I have a great support group that's going to get me through today, and that's what it's about. It's about unity and support, and it's about breaking down barriers. And if people are going to survive addiction, then they need to be willing to ask, and people need to be receptive to that.
Clive Derbyshire, thank you very, very much.
Thanks, Ian.